Martin Ashworth is a master leather craftsman who trained in saddle-making skills whilst in the Royal Marines.
Martin is a leather worker of the highest order.
His gnarled hands are testimony to how hard he works on this.
His standards are incredibly high, his knowledge is massive.
Today, Dru has a piece of designer label history to show him. A century-old trunk by Luj Viton, which might have had one too many adventures. Despite his wide experience of Luj Viton's early designs, Martin has never seen a trunk exactly like this one. So restoring it will require careful detective work. Having peeled away the fabric lining, Martin has to remove a canvas layer that's dried and cracked with age. From experience, he knows to keep an eye out for traces left behind by the original craftsman.
A lot of people used to sign underneath their work or date it. And there's been lots of times when you found messages from 100 years ago. Looks like a signature of the guy who's put it together, who is underneath the lining. If you look on that one, the signature looks very much similar. So I think this would have been the assemblyman's signature. That would have been there for 100 and odd years. And it's a little treasure to be seen, but unfortunately, once I covered it up again, it'll never be seen again. It's essential when you're refurbishing something, you keep all the original parts, especially Luj Viton, because you can't get hold of these once they were made, and these are over 100 years old and will never be replaced. So it's essential that I try and get these out intact. I'll straighten these up and then put the new leather loop in back together with the original studs. I'm having a look at this colour now. In my opinion, it's not the original colour. It's been painted over the top. If you look down here on this loop, it's never come off. So when I take that leather off, we'll reveal the original colour of the case underneath.
The very first Luj Viton trunks, dating from the late 1850s, were light grey, soon followed by designs in beige and brown.
Look carefully, you can see the light brown canvas coming through. There we go, that is the original colour.
As this canvas layer is non-original, Martin's removing it to replace it with a colour more in keeping with when it was first built.
It looks a complete and utter mess now, but you wait for the magic to start. I'll clean the woodwork with wire wool and white spirit. It'll just take off any surface soil that it's gathered over the years. This was made in the days of coal fires, days of steam travel. So consequently, any handling that it had by porters and people was always absolutely manky.
As the trunk's non-standard design remains a mystery, Dru wants to know more. So Rebecca's in London to try and unlock its hidden past, and at the same time increase its value. She's meeting with Tim Bent, an antique luggage expert and authority on Luj Viton.
Hi, Tim.
Hello, Rebecca. Nice to see you.
Thanks for seeing me. This is amazing.
Any clues to the provenance could make this already valuable item even more profitable.
You've got your absolute classic LV monogrammed hat box here, but also this yellow trunk.
So that's Luj Viton as well?
It is, absolutely. But he made in various colours, a yellow, the orange was actually another really popular colour for him. He also made these beautiful, very simple leather cases, really discreet, really subtle. But when you look closely, actually the branding says everything about Viton. The locks branded, all of the rivets are branded, the clips are branded.
Can I show you photographs of our Luj Viton?
Let's see.
Yes, they are not in this condition, I assure you.
It'll be fascinating
Yes?
to see. So let's see if we can get some
Great,
history.
thank you.
Wonderful colour, isn't it? The Rue Scribe dress was Viton's first shop between 1871 and 1914, but he moved from there to the Champs-Élysées in 1914, which means that the trunk is very unlikely to be later than that date. And actually, the pattern of lock, this 5-lever tumbler lock, was only invented in 1890.
So we could be looking around 1910s-ish?
Yeah, I think my gut feeling is that it would be into the 20th century, but early into the 20th century.
So who do you think would have bought this case? What type of person?
I think it would have been specially commissioned because it's got really unusual details. The straps here, it was actually made so that you could have two straps to hold it very tightly against something. And this black steel trim has a sort of practicality, a functionality about it that I think could well be either military or automobile. If it was an Explorer, they would have made it doubly strong because they were going to be away perhaps for 6 months, and it would have been carried by the locals.
Well, that's amazing. So there are actually two sides to Luj Viton. We've got the glorious, glamorous ladies and their shoe trunks and their hat cases. And then we've got this sort of, I'm off on a mission, perhaps to Africa. And this Explorer would also have a Luj Viton trunk.
Yeah. It's lived a hard life as well. It's amazing that it's survived and is going to be saved.
It seems Dru's find is a true one-off. And if restoration goes according to plan, it could have the unique selling point of having belonged to a Victorian explorer. Having stripped the cracked and peeling canvas covering, Martin has to give the trunk an authentic new outer skin. He's tracked down a modern-day fabric very close to that used by the original Luj Viton craftsman.
I managed to do a bit of digging, talking to people who deal in Luj Viton, and we came up with this material, what they call a legal buckram.
Hard-wearing buckram is made of stiff cotton and used to bind legal reference books.
It is exactly the same thickness, the same weight, the same weave, virtually the same colour as what Luj Viton used on their cases. So out of nothing, we've come up with a perfect replica.
It's glued on with carpet adhesive, and Martin uses a time-tested tool to achieve perfectly fitted edges.
This is what I call a bone folder. It's made of antler, which is in effect bone. It's ideal, it's smooth, it gets right into the corners that I need to crease it. But it's a piece of antler that was picked up in Scotland, and you can get right into the edges, so I know where to cut. Now that is slightly different.
But before Dru sees the finished item, there's one more trick Martin has up his sleeve.
Time for my secret weapon. Very sophisticated. If you consider the biggest commodity around would have been coal, so hence my secret weapon, which is coal dust. Instantly, it's just gathered a few years of age. You've got to be an investigator to try and work out what may have happened to it, and then recreate that process to give a reasonable effect. You can see it's just got a hint of grubbiness, handling, general dirt out of the atmosphere. This way, at least it gives you the illusion that it's been around a while, you know?
In the leather workshop, Martin is adding the finishing touches to Dru's Luj Viton trunk. A week ago, this rare piece, which may have been the property of a turn-of-the-century explorer, was rotting on the inside and peeling on the outside.
I think Dru will be very pleased with it. It was in a bit of a terrible state when he first came. It's just become a nice item to have, and I think they become precious items to own again and give a separate life. And from taking them from that stage to the stage it is in now, I think he could be well chuffed when he sees it.
I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing this, because I loved it before.
Come on. Shall I?
Yes, please. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
After 2 weeks in Martin's workshop, this trunk is once again ready for adventure, with an elegantly aged fabric covering and lining, and retaining all the original studs and frame. Martin's even added vintage luggage labels, and the trunk is now valued at up to £3,000.